Did you hear that all of the Muppets, the guys that play the Muppets characters got fired?
I just heard something like that.
Yeah, recently. Yeah, they I don't know why, but they all got fired, and then it makes a lot more sense. Did you see Colbert the other night where they had Kermit the Frog being voiced by Donald Trumps and Sean Spicer?
No, I didn't.
Good times. Welcome to This Week in Film. Hello, Wilmington, Delaware, and all the cities around the world. That's my new open for the show.
I like that there was a cold open.
I'm Nick Panotto, joined as always by Matt Lauer, Midwest Matt.
Hi, everybody.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing pretty good, too. Well, getting right to it. We're going to talk about the movie everyone's been chatting about. The
Spider-Man
Hallow.
This is choreographed well.
Yeah. So we both watched the movie The Hallow, which is an Irish horror movie. We also saw Spider-Man Homecoming, but we'll talk about that next.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
This is a difficult one to talk about because I enjoyed this movie. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but I also want to talk about the ending. So we're just going to say this is a spoiled episode because we're going to spoil Spider-Man Homecoming and also The Hallow.
Yeah, and for those of you who are going to stick around for the Spider-Man part, there are some things that you don't want spoiled.
It's true, yeah. Real quick, if you're just going to turn the episode off, goodbye. And
Nice seeing you.
And Spider-Man Homecoming was great.
Oh yeah, it was really good.
So go see it and then come back to this and you'll know why we're talking about it because we watched it this week in film.
Indeed. So The Hallow, that Irish horror
You call it
movie.
The Hallow or The Hallow?
I guess The Hallow is
Because I couldn't
phonetically
decide
how
how
it
I
reads
wanted
phonetically.
to pronounce it.
Well, I'd say Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, so I'll go with Hallow because that is how it's spelled.
It's from 2015 and directed by Corin Hardy.
And it stars Irish John Hamm,
Bojana Novakovic, and Roose Bolton from Game of Thrones.
right?
This was a quality horror movie, and we were talking about it earlier, and I was saying how I'm not sure if I would still like it if it was made in Southern California and starred Americans. Like, I believe the Irish charm of it puts it above the average line.
Yeah, definitely. There's something in it atmospherically that comes across because it isn't an American movie and it doesn't feel at all like an American movie. And it doesn't feel like a fake foreign movie either where they have Americans, speaking with accents.
Yeah. So real quick, the movie The Hallow, what's it about, Matt?
It's about a family, really. A man, his wife, and their baby. And the man's doing some sort of research on ecological stuff.
He's some kind of scientist dude.
Yeah, and one of the things that I liked about this movie is they didn't try to over-explain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of let you go, oh, okay, I can see that he's messing with cells and watching what they're doing under a microscope, and it really allows you just to enjoy the atmosphere of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think it allows it to be a lot more spooky because of it. Like anytime that he would look through this microscope, it would take me out of the spook a little bit, but it was so brief and it was so like
we're knee deep in the spook.
But it's so brief and because they didn't explain it a whole lot, it really allowed for just enjoying the.
I don't feel like they explained really anything, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like you kind of figure it out on your own, which is what a movie's supposed to do. You're supposed to tell yourself the story that you're being told. You don't need it explained to you.
Right.
There's never really Mr. Exposition who shows up and says, hey, here's what's happening.
Yeah, even as you, and I guess some of this conversation we can do without throwing in a lot of spoilers.
Oh,
but
right.
even
wait, hang on. At this point, we're going to talk about spoilers. It's happening.
Okay.
All right.
Well, you can throw in whatever details you want, but I was just going to say, like,
No,
as
it's
you're
happening
finding
right now.
okay. But as you're finding out what's going on, you're finding out kind of with the characters, because they do get a little bit of an explanation as to what's going on as scary things start to happen. But it doesn't have that exposition feel, like the paperclip just popped up in the corner of the screen and starts telling you stuff.
For instance, at the beginning of the movie, when the guy, Irish John Hamm, is in the woods and he's marking trees to be taken down. His job, I guess he works for the government, and the government has sold off one of Ireland's last forests. Fun fact about Ireland and England, they don't have a lot of trees. Like, they don't have very many forests because over the years they've chopped them down. You know, it's an island, and they just chop down the trees. There are some forests, but they don't have very many. It's not something you think about when you look at it. And then when you see a picture of Ireland, you're going to be like, oh, it's just a lot of grass.
Huh.
So in this movie, he's marking trees because his job is to decide what trees need to come down. I guess 1 for logging and 2 eco health reasons. Like, I guess he's choosing distressed trees or things like that because he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing, because he says it over and over again. He's like, I don't want to chop the trees down. I like trees, but it's my job, so these trees got to go. But then he finds this deer.
Oh, yeah. There's sort of a ruin of a house.
A scary ruin.
Yeah, finds a half-mangled deer carcass.
Yeah. And
gross stuff.
This is where the movie kind of takes a so yeah, that deer.
There's a deer body.
As we were saying just seconds ago, he finds that deer
carcass
in the ruin, and
collects a little bit of gross DNA stuff off of it.
Right. And then what he tries to imply, I guess he explains it to his wife later, is that the deer was infected with that parasitic larva that
he sees under the microscope.
Yeah, but like it's that parasite that can infect ants' brains to get them to climb to the highest point of something it's that zombie parasite.
Man, I must have been doing something at the same time I was watching this movie, because I don't remember that.
Oh, really? That's when him and his wife are smoking the marijuanas. That's what they're talking about.
Oh.
Yeah, so he takes a sample of that. For some reason has medical gloves. And,
this movie may have more exposition than I realized. I tuned out some of the info.
But the thing about it is that the movie starts off with a poem. It says something like, if you plant roots in the Hallow you will become, or something like that.
Hallow be your name.
Thy kingdom come.
That's the last. The last line is, then hallow be your name, and it is something like, if you place roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the implication here with all the science stuff, because he takes his sample home and hooks it up to like an electron microscope he has in his bedroom that is connected to the world's oldest computer monitor.
Right.
And it shows the cell being attacked by the parasite and it taking control. And so what the implication is that, oh, I see, whatever's going on in this movie has something to do with this parasitic fungus that takes control of your mind. And nope.
Yeah, right.
It's about monsters that live in the forest.
Yeah, and there's something about them that it does spread. It does have something to do with him bringing that stuff back to the house. It's almost like... I
don't think it does, though.
I think it does. I think it's like, because he took it, like if you steal something from a national park, you're supposed to have bad luck. Like, I think it's something like that. Like, he takes it back.
I don't know.
And then because it starts growing around the house.
But was it already there? Because she starts taking the iron bars off of the house when Roose Bolton comes by.
And I think that's something that would have protected them against,
Right. That's why the bars
Hallow,
are there.
which are like evil fairies, by the way.
Right. Yeah. The bad guys in the movie are evil monsters that live in the woods and they steal children.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. The head monster is Bruce Bolton's monster child.
But it's not really the plot of the movie that is the reason to watch it. So as much as we're kind of explaining like what happens and doesn't happen, like it's kind of the atmosphere and the tone of it that really is what's effective. Which might be one of the reasons the details didn't really stick with me that much either. But there are a lot of good moments. There's some stuff that happens around a car that's pretty creepy.
Yeah, there's that one scene where the car stalls on the road and he gets locked in his trunk. What was up with that? Like, he was in that trunk for hours. And the monsters don't start attacking until it gets dark? Well, I guess that makes sense because they only come at night because the light hurts them.
Yeah.
But who threw him in the trunk?
I don't know if he was in the trunk for as long as all that. Like, I think it happens kind of at dusk and then it's getting dark. And then he manages to escape from the trunk.
Daylight.
But the question still stands of like, why do they then disappear for a while and not like stick around and kill him? Because the rest of the movie,
they're after that baby. Baby's right there.
Yeah. The one thing about this movie that's not exactly fulfilling is the motives of these elf people.
Yeah.
Or fairies.
The fairies.
Yeah. You don't quite know what the rules are that they're living by and the way that they treat other characters, like the family's dog, the father,
the other people in the town.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, but the movie's pretty effective as far as like a cheap horror movie. But would it work if it took place in America? I say no.
If it were still done the same way, but they just didn't have accents, I guess maybe. But then it's hard to imagine that without imagining it having more of an American production.
That big house that they're in is like a house that's older than this country.
Right.
We're in America. And so like the history, like the age of the buildings has something to do with it too, where like countless generations of families lived in that house and how many of them were afraid of the woods.
Yeah, like even though they have cell phones, once the cell phones are sort of out of the picture, you don't feel like you're in quite modern times. You could be anywhere between like the 60s and now.
Yeah.
Whereas like if it were an American thing, it probably
and
would have
the
a hard
characters
time doing that.
do most of the right things. Like they call the cops and the cops come and the one cop that shows up, he says, "Yeah, there's a lot of superstition around these areas and you're not in a good spot." And he starts talking about the Hallow, and the Irish John Hamm says, "Oh, so you believe this too?" And he goes, "No, I don't believe any of this nonsense." And then he leaves because it's basically just,
Yeah, there's a degree of believability in terms of how people are responding to things.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned offline something too, where the wife was trying to convince the guy of something, and that played out well.
Yeah, she was trying to say, "Let's leave. Like, let's get out of here." And he goes, "No, I'm not afraid." She goes, "Let's get the hell out of here." And he goes, "It's a good point. Let's leave."
Yeah, like
and
he
then
gets
they try to
convinced
leave.
kind of the way people do sometimes, where it's like, no, we really have to. And they go, "All right, I guess you're right."
I guess, you know what? I am being a bit unreasonable.
Yeah. And then the movie takes about 2/3 to maybe 3/4 of the way through the movie. It takes kind of a strange turn.
Yeah. The guy spends a whole lot of time looking through a keyhole, and the monsters in the forest have amazing aim, and they shoot a spore. I'm guessing it's a spore.
It's like some sort of needle
dart,
proboscis kind of thing.
something like that, right into his eyeball.
Yeah.
And,
Which hurts him for about 2 seconds. And like, I'm like, if someone shot a needle in my eye, I'd be down on the ground, like,
I mean,
screaming in agony for hours.
I mean,
And,
I've had my eyeball cut open while I was watching it. I had eye surgery, and I wanted to scream the entire time.
And presumably
This
that
was
was
an
with some sort of
procedure.
anesthetic, right?
I mean, I think I had a Vicodin, and then they like numb the area.
Yeah.
But you
That's what
have
I mean.
to like stay awake and stare at the light.
Well, that sounds terrifying.
It does.
But he has no
I
numbing
still have
agent.
nightmares about it.
And I'm sorry to hear that, Nick. he
This was an elective procedure.
Yeah, you chose to do that.
Yeah.
But he gets shot in the eye, and like 5 seconds later, he's just running around like, yeah, we got to get away from these
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd be screaming and running too, but I'd be screaming a lot more if there was a needle in my eye.
Yeah. But one of the things that they try to get across is that the parasite or whatever will like infect your blood and will like slowly take over you, which is, I guess, what they're trying to tell with the deer and stuff. So when he's handling everything with the medical gloves on, you're like, okay, all right, so he's got to be careful with how he touches this. But then like the evil fungus is growing everywhere unbelievably fast. And they
all
just
over
start
the house.
tearing it apart with their hands. And all I could think was, oh, they're going to cut their hands and get infected with this stuff. Nope. It's
just through the eye needles.
Just oily vines.
And you know, at the point that, and I guess that's where the mind control thing starts to come in, because the man starts to sort of become one of these things.
Yeah.
As that started to happen, especially when he pulls out a giant flaming scythe,
That thing
one of
burns
those Reaper
for
hooks.
hours.
Yeah. It gets a little silly.
That's a tool that only makes sense to have in Ireland. Like, I know that they exist in America where we are. And but it being in random Ireland,
It's like acceptable
just
there.
an Irish. Here's the tool we've had for 40 years.
Well, and it gets that, you know, in that moment I was like, oh man, this movie just turned dumb, and I had spent the last 20 minutes before that being really grateful that it didn't get dumb. But the dumb
is
doesn't
okay.
last that long, because about 10 minutes later, it takes sort of another twist. And at the same time as it takes another twist, more really creepy elements come out, because some of the visuals of these creatures are pretty disturbing.
Yeah, the creatures are pretty scary looking.
So like the atmosphere sort of changes again, but it's effectively creepy again. So I ended up with the movie as a whole appreciating the atmosphere all the way through. Well, and then at the very end, there's sort of a which one is the real baby moment.
Right. And I did not know which was the right baby.
Right, you don't know, and
And
it feels like
spoil
you could.
the end.
It feels like you could know, and you're like, oh, well, if it goes in the direction it might, it'd be stupid, but you can't quite tell.
Yeah.
And then they make a good choice.
It definitely feels like they flipped a coin on whether or not it would be the right baby.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, the side that landed heads up was
like, I get the feeling they shot it both ways and didn't know which one to use till they were editing it.
Yeah, or like maybe had like a test audience or something and went, okay, let's see how that plays out.
But
and then there's another end. After did you watch the credits?
The cheap thing at the very. Oh no, you're right, with the loggers.
Yeah.
Where
it's like growing on the logs.
Yeah, and then they do like one last jump scare, which left a sour taste in my mouth.
Oh, I forgot about the jump scare.
I like that sequence though at the end there with the loggers. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I should keep watching or not. I was like, the credits are going up, but there's stuff happening.
Yeah,
so I guess I'll keep watching.
But like they're chopping all the trees down in the forests, and you're like, oh, are all of these men going to be attacked by the wood monsters? And I don't know. Maybe. Look for the Hallow too.
Yeah, I kind of concluded yes.
Yeah, I would watch a sequel to it. I'm sure it wouldn't be as good, but it's a movie. I told my wife about it, and I was like, "You should watch it. It was pretty cool." And I would watch it again, which is pretty rare for like a Netflix horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're into simple, straightforward horror flicks, this is one of those.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the second movie we both saw.
This one together.
We did. We went on a date this afternoon and saw Spider-Man Homecoming.
And it was pretty awesome.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved everything. I loved all the little nods, all the like Easter eggs and all that stuff like that I could catch. Everything. I loved everything. Yeah, I thought Michael Keaton was a terrifying villain.
I thought he was interesting. I didn't find him terrifying, but I did find him interesting and good.
And by the way,
believable, complex.
We're still going to go into spoilers on Spider-Man Homecoming. So if you haven't seen it and are going to, stop listening.
Now. But come back later.
Come back immediately after. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm trying to think though of any. I know it's one of those things where if I were to watch it again, there'd be a few things I could pick out. But I'm trying to remember if there were any moments where I was like, "Oh, that was dumb." Oh, you know what? When he was looking into the puddle, and there's a moment where he's like seeing the mask.
Oh yeah, that was a little hokey.
There's like a voiceover thing that's a bit unnecessary. Mm-hmm. But there may be 2 or 3 other things that are a little bit like that where it's a little unnecessary, but it really doesn't spoil the movie at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from the charm, doesn't take away from the fun. I had heard before that some folks think there are a few lulls in the movie, but I didn't really feel that way. There was one thing actually. Spider-Man, when it's not close up, still has that rubbery look when he's moving around. It's like
that CGI Running Man thing.
Yeah, where it's like the body looks like it's like a rubber band almost.
Yeah,
there's something about the physics is off.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, but it's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't really ruin anything.
I thought this movie is a great example of tone. Like the movie is very funny.
Yeah.
But it's not a comedy. Like every scene you're kind of going, "Oh, what's the next thing that's going to make me laugh in this cool action movie?" Like it's a good example of tone where like across the board, like when Peter Parker is on or when he's Spider-Man, spoiler alert, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and like he goes through some pretty serious things in the movie, but he always has a lightness about him, and it affects the entire movie. Like whenever he's on screen, the movie is light, and the Vulture is a very dark character, and whenever he's on, it's very dark. And then there are some moments when the two of them are interacting together, and that's when the two tones clash, but it doesn't get muddied, where you have the lightness of Peter Parker, but the heaviness of what the Vulture represents, conflicting with each other. And then there's the inherent conflict of the movie, which is really well done.
And there's more tension there than I think there are. And I mean, you can't really, I guess you could, but I wouldn't bother talking about Spider-Man and just avoid comparing it all.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the tension there between the bad guy and Peter when they're actually interacting with each other one-on-one is like the tension's a lot more present. It makes a lot more sense. They both have reasons for being the way they are that don't feel as cartoonish as like the Dr. Octopus stuff that's in Spider-Man 2. And I compare that the most because that is the best Spider-Man, probably behind this one.
I haven't decided on that.
Yeah. I think that's fair because I think Spider-Man 2 might actually be a little bit better of a plot, but it's not as charming. This guy, Tom Holland's really awesome. And actually, there are some things in this movie that I think are really they're done in a really cool way for this movie, where instead of just spelling out exposition and origin story stuff at the very beginning and, spending 40 minutes watching him turn into Spider-Man, it's kind of learn as you go, and in fun ways. You see him having conversations and with a couple different people, and with Tony Stark, who's there not that much, fortunately, with his friend. So you kind of get bits and pieces to build the backstory on your own, and it doesn't take really time. It's organic, and then you have the backstory without having to watch it all happen again and watch Uncle Ben be like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dead.
Or whatever Martin Sheen's version said, if you can do something, then you have to do that
Your
thing.
parents are secret agents and you're all part of a monstrous machine.
Dead. But yeah, so
very entertaining. I mean, the movie is very charming. It's very light. I just loved it. I really, really liked it. I liked all the stuff with the suit, like the Tony Stark Spider-Man suit.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I would find that all very annoying, but I didn't. I really liked it. Like how he's able, like in the comic books, when he's able to like shoot like web balls and like make a giant net and stuff, you're like, how's he able to do that? And they have these schematics in the comic books that say he can twist the nozzle on the web shooters to make them wide or bigger, and he can decide to do that. And like every time you read that, you're like, that's stupid. Like, how does he make a web baseball bat that easily, And then yeah, he does. And he makes everything with webs. Like at one point he like makes a web Captain America shield to like charge some things, And you're like, how can he make that? And then with the Stark suit, where he like looks at his hands and it says, you have 536 web combinations available to you. You're like, that's brilliant.
Well, and when it comes to the Tony Stark stuff and the larger Marvel, I guess the MCU, it really works. Like I think I've mentioned on here before, I don't really like the Avengers that much, but it doesn't feel like that stuff's invading this movie. It feels like this is its own movie, but it also takes place in this universe, and the things that are brought in from the rest of the universe are actually relevant to the plot, relevant to his development, and kind of move it along and add stakes to it at the same time.
Yeah.
So like, that's the one thing where I'd say, I think that part, it's not necessarily plot, but it's story, I guess. And that maybe even be better than Spider-Man 2.
There are little nods to all the previous like Iron Man, Captain America, and Avengers movies.
Some very hilarious.
Yeah, some are great, but like the movie starts out right after the first Avengers movie, with like a little prologue where Michael Keaton is like a waste pick-upper guy. Like he's in charge of cleaning up the city before there's like a new Tony Stark division of Homeland Security or SHIELD or something that they clean it up. And then that's the beginning of like the origin of the Vulture, where he's like, what? But I bought a car.
I did feel like, actually, that was the one moment I felt like that moved slightly too fast for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it was like he got fired, and 2 minutes later, I think literally, he's giving a speech to the people that work with him and going like, well, then we're going to change with this world. Right. We're now bad guys.
We're bad guys now. Everybody on board? I'm on board. Okay, good. Yeah. We're bad guys.
But then at the same time, throughout the rest of the movie, you see him concerned about his family and the people he's trying to take care of, and it ends up working better with that.
And then, like, as the movie goes on, like, basically what the Vulture's doing is stealing from the government, from all of the Avengers' adventures. Like, because at some point they're going through some, like, Ultron robot pieces, and then basically what they're looking for are these energy crystals from the aliens that invaded during the first Avengers movie. So it really makes the universe feel lived in and gives some weight behind all of the other movies. Like at one point like all the kids in this school have to watch this Captain America video, and Hannibal Buress is he's like the gym teacher. He's a very funny comedian, and he I'm gonna ruin the joke for everyone, but he sets up the tape where he's like, so I don't know, Captain America's like some sort of international war criminal now. I don't know, but we still have to watch this tape because of the events from Civil War. So it's very funny where like all these people still live in this universe, and they know, hey, the Avengers had a huge falling out, and we still don't know where we are from all of that. But, watch this video because you're in school.
Well, and they took advantage of things like that to make little jokes too. Like one of the videos, Captain America is like, okay, so you're a gym teacher here, and he points to the left, but the gym teacher's on the wrong side of the TV. Yeah. And there are a handful of little jokes like that if you were just like, if you glanced away or weren't really paying attention completely, you'd sort of miss.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the funniest. I think those are the funniest things that happen in the movie. Like,
I mean,
I don't laugh out loud at movies very often unless they're bad and I'm laughing at how awful they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I laughed at a handful of like intended, just kind of dry, like witty sort of
like
things.
Just a quick gag.
Yeah.
Like that scene when he leaves the party as Spider-Man and he realizes that there are no buildings to web sling from, and he has to run across that golf course.
Yeah.
I about fell out of my chair.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Because that's like a real thing that he would have to deal with. Like, there's no buildings here. Like his superpower of web slinging through the canyons of New York City is such a specific thing. Like he can't go anywhere else.
Yeah, it's got limitations.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one thing that throughout the movie actually comes across a lot more than the other Spider-Man movies. Or maybe I just care about it more, but it worked for me more with Tom Holland, where I'm like, I actually feel like this guy is... the deck is sort of stacked against him. It's not that he's mopey and whiny and upset about something, so he's not being a superhero. It's that he's actually going up against some tough things.
Yeah.
And he's got to kind of work his way through that. Like you can feel the growing pains. Whereas in the other Spider-Man movies, I felt like it was just like, yeah, I could do stuff, but cry face.
Well, like even in this movie, like the high school that he goes to is a high school for talented and gifted, super smart kids. Like he goes to science high school, and even there, he's still kind of a nerd. Like his main antagonist, like they have the Flash Thompson character, which is like a comic book guy, or a comic book character who was his like bully in high school,
right?
Who loves Spider-Man, but like even Flash Thompson is a super smart science kid,
right?
But not very good. Like that one kid, all his like they play like the academic decathlon thing, where the one Asian kid, like the only answer he ever says is "Flash is wrong." That kills me. It was really good, and all the child actors, I guess they're all probably 20 years old, but like all the kids in the school were great. Like all of the side school kid characters.
Yeah.
And like there's like a little moment where Spider-Man and his friend Ned are hiding around the corner because the Vulture's henchmen are hunting for him. And they're hiding in front of this window, and there's like these two kids sitting in the background like going like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
And like Peter Parker runs away to go take care of the problem, and the one kid knocks on the window like, what are you doing?
What are you doing out there? Why are you standing there in the corner?
Right, because why would they be quiet?
Right.
Like they don't know. Like there's this whole world that's happening right under the nose of all these people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's things like that that are really funny because they would happen and actually make things seem a little bit more
grounded.
Real. Yeah. It's like when you can see that in a movie you're looking at like like Rogue One, for instance, and you can like things look like they've been worn, you know, like things are dirty.
Yeah.
There's like little things like that where you go like, oh, this actually makes this world feel a little bit more lived in, a little bit more real. And I agree. I think all the acting all the way around was really good. Especially from the young people. Like, I thought Michael Keaton did a good job. There were a couple lines I didn't really like that much, but they were corny lines. But like,
I
the
even
kids are
liked
awesome.
Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. Thought she was fine. The kid that plays his best friend was great. I don't know that actor's name, but but he was terrific. Tom Holland is easily my favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah,
easily.
Definitely.
Like I will always love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and I will always love Spider-Man 2, and we all know how Keith feels about Spider-Man 1. but Tom Holland is Spider-Man. And it's just because he's so young. Like at one point, Tony Stark refers to him. He's like, and you're just some 14-year-old kid. And he's like, I'm 15. And he's like, shut the hell up.
Well, and this, you know, I kind of like Spider-Man, but like I've only ever read the Maximum Carnage thing. And I don't get into the corny jokes and stuff that he makes. With Tom Holland, it works. Like when he's making like these sort of goofy comments, it really works. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I can actually enjoy this dude making corny comments like and goofy
quips,
stuff. Yeah, because he's a kid. He would do that. He would say stuff. He does it.
He's scared. He doesn't know what's going on, so he's just gonna like that scene. Like it's in all the trailers or whatever. But that scene where he goes into the bank while they're robbing the bank, and he doesn't know what to do that looks cool.
Yeah.
Where he like leans against the wall and he's like, oh, maybe.
How do I be intimidating?
Hey, oh gosh, intimidation mode. Oh man, that was like you said when we were leaving the theater. Like at one point, Donald Glover is in the movie and Spider-Man tries to intimidate him, and the suit has a special intimidation mode.
I think it's interrogation.
Interrogation mode.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah,
and it's clearly just a slap in the face to Batman, because Spider-Man plops down in front of Donald Glover, and he's just like, "Where were the drugs going?"
It's really funny.
And the guy, the Donald Glover, is like,
"You're not very good at this."
He's like, "What? Why are you talking like that? What happened to the little girl voice you had yesterday?"
Yeah.
You know, it's really good.
It's got a lot of moments like that.
Yeah. So
Marissa Tomei has a half of a line or an incomplete line.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Very funny. It made me very excited to see more of the Spider-Man world. Whereas like the last two movies, I was just kind of like, ugh.
I didn't mind Amazing Spider-Man that much. I didn't like the second one at all. But even the first one, even though I enjoyed it, again, like there's something about Tom Holland. I guess the fact that he's younger, but there's also something about just his face and his voice. Maybe, you know, partly because he is young, but like he can be doing kind of smart alecky stuff, and it's kind of charming. Whereas like the Andrew Garfield character, when he was doing smart ass stuff, I'm like, you just seem like kind of a prick.
Yeah.
And when Tobey Maguire was doing, I'm like, I just feel like you don't know how to read your goofy lines. They're goofy lines, and you don't know quite what to do with that.
I think Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and I saw something online recently. I don't remember the video on YouTube, but it came out just recently, and if someone wants to let me know what it was, I'll credit it. But they did like a review of like the difference between Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans, and not so much the difference in the quality of the movies, because there's no question there. But we're talking about the first two Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. But Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was good. I liked his Spider-Man, but his Peter Parker, he was, and this is what they said in the video, is that he was a cool dude. Like, Peter Parker isn't cool.
No.
And he's also not a dick. Like, his Peter Parker was a dick. Whereas his Spider-Man was the same exact character, but it kind of worked as Spider-Man, but the movie that was around him was terrible. Like, those Spider-Man movies weren't bad because of Andrew Garfield.
Right.
but then like the Tobey Maguire, I kind of agree with you where I like his Peter Parker a lot. Or I mean, I disagree with you where I like his Peter Parker a lot, but his Spider-Man like lacked that smartassness that it needed. Like he said a couple of quips here and there, but nothing like the way Tom Holland delivers them.
Yeah. Tom Holland, I'm like, oh, like I believe that he's making the joke.
Yeah,
that he's
like
making, or that he's making
back in the scene in when they're robbing the ATM, like they're hitting him with like that gravity gun thing.
Yeah.
And he's like holding on to the ground and he's like, oh my God, that really hurts. What is that thing?
Yeah.
You know? One thing that they didn't address at all in the movie, and I read an interview with like one of the producers where they're like, we didn't even bother with that, is the Spidey sense.
Yeah.
Like I guess he just doesn't have it. So I don't know if it's...
That came to mind for me at some point, and I was like, I don't really know how I would handle that either.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it to some degree. Like I definitely wouldn't want it to be something that's overpowered where it seems like he knows everything that's about to happen.
Right.
Because that's a little too overpowered. But
yeah. Well, it's like in that scene in the first Spider-Man where he gets into the fight with the bully with Flash Thompson, and Flash is like throwing punches at him, and he's going so slow that Peter like leans back and like looks at his fist, and he goes like, huh. Neat. That's like one of the best moments from the first Spider-Man is when he realizes just how fast he is. But that's like the only time they really show the spider sense thing, except for like at the end when he jumps over the Green Goblin's glider thing. The end of the movie had echoes of that first Spider-Man movie. Like the ending of the first Spider-Man movie, I love. Like when the Green Goblin's pumpkin bomb blows up half of his face and he's all like bloodied and the mask is like shredded. Yeah. That's the problem one problem I had a lot with Amazing Spider-Man 2 is he just constantly takes his mask off because producers complain, oh, well, we can't see his mouth. We can't see his face, you know? Mm-hmm. So like even in this one, it has a little touch of he takes his mask off an awful lot. Whereas at the end of the first Spider-Man movie, he's like battle damaged to reveal his face so you can get the emotion that way.
Well, with the current design of the costume too, there's I guess you're right. He did take the mask off quite a few times, but even when he has it on, because the eyes change shape, yeah, there's so much
more emotion
in that. It really is emotive, and you know, I think in the other movies there's a bit of like extra body movement to make up for the fact that the eyes don't change, and it doesn't seem quite so
natural.
So here that's pretty nice. And there really weren't one thing I was really grateful for was that there weren't many things that during the movie, you know, of course we're comparing now a bit, but like during the movie I wasn't reminded of the other movies. Mm-hmm. And I was really grateful for that when he did look in the puddle and you can see half his mask and half his face exposed, I was like, oh, that's a little bit like that. But otherwise, there really weren't any things, like I want to say scenes, but there's actually one other exception because there's a very short, and I was really grateful it was short. There's a moment in this movie where it feels a little bit like the raindrops keep falling on my head scene, where it's like he goes back to just being a student, but it's not even a montage. It's like him and his friend building something out of Legos, and then it moves on. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, and I think that's actually one moment where I was like, oh, there hasn't been a lot of that throughout the movie where I've been reminded of the other movies. It's very much its own thing.
And you really get to feel that he is a kid. Like his buddy wants to come over and build Legos. Yeah. And like at one point the friend is like, I want to be your guy in the chair. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? He's like, you know, like you call me up on the phone and I'm on all these computers for you. And when that scene happens, I didn't realize it was happening until he like slides back from the computer and he's like, guy in the chair. Oh
yeah, and even there, that's in the midst of action going on where there's some tension and stuff, but it's actually still fun, and it doesn't take away from it. It's not like the stakes just disappear because there's a joke. It's like, no, we're having fun while stuff's happening.
Yeah, the stakes throughout the movie get increasingly higher. Like that tension when you're in the car before the dance.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
That was like as he's putting it all together. I mean, I don't know why we're trying not to do spoilers for this, but I don't know. Hey,
didn't seem like we were.
Michael Keaton is Liz's dad. There, right. I did it.
Yeah.
All right. So when they're in the car together and Michael Keaton's putting it together, like I don't know how he figured it out other than maybe Peter Parker being weird.
Well, it was that the comments were just happening to come up that were like, hey, you weren't there during that moment that thing happened where Spider-Man was.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there was this other moment. No, you weren't there for that either.
Right.
You're never around when Spider-Man's around.
Yeah.
But you're always at the places that he is.
Yeah. Like he put it together a little quick, but it worked. And the tension, like when Michael Keaton answered that door, I gasped. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Because part of me was like, oh my God, he's not that, oh my God, he kidnapped her family. I'm like, oh, he kidnapped the family, like, and he's just waiting for him. And then I went, oh my God, he's the dad.
Right.
And I went, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really good movie. Really enjoyed the hell out of it.
And there's a character in the movie who you sort of find out who they are at the end, and they're a likable character, and they're kept kind of subtle enough. They only have a couple lines, and then at the end you find out who she is, and you're like, oh,
I didn't care for that.
I wouldn't have if I didn't like the character, but throughout the movie I was like, I like this chick. She's fun.
I mean, I thought she was fun, but they should have just gone with a different character for her.
I don't know.
And I thought that was real heavy-handed at the end. That's one thing I didn't like, is they should have just made her a different character.
See, I think we're looking at it from two different angles. Not that we have to agree anyway, but like
you will agree with me.
I'm thinking if spoiler, if Mary Jane is going to be in the movies, she should be likable. That's where I'm coming from. So like when she was like, oh, my friends call me MJ, I was like, oh, that's kind of annoying. So I kind of see where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm like, well, of course MJ's going to be in these. Cool. It's actually this chick who's, pretty interesting and fun.
Now, I don't know if you caught this, but they were a little heavy-handed with that. But did you notice Gwen Stacy? She was the blonde with the black headband.
Okay, yeah, I saw her. I noticed her visually, but I didn't.
I'm assuming that's supposed to be Gwen Stacy.
Oh, they didn't say her name.
They didn't say her name because I was listening for it a couple of times, but they were real casual with things like that. Like at one point, when one of the vultures' plans gets screwed up, and he goes, "Well, we've only got 2 more jobs," and he's like, is the Gargan thing ready to go? And I was like, oh, Gargan. Oh man, are they going to do Scorpion? And they kind of do. Like they kind of do. Matt Gargan is the Scorpion.
I don't know enough of the story.
He's a Spider-Man villain. He's the guy that has a big scorpion's tail. He wears a big suit, and they did experiments on him, and he turns into a monster. Spoiler alert.
Well, he just spoiled a movie
but he has a scorpion tattoo on his neck. Yeah. And but I was like, oh man, what a subtle thing. Like it's not heavy-handed until the end when it's not subtle. But I liked it. I like all the little nods and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where they go next, so long as Marvel is in control.
Yeah, I hope they won't rush it so much that there's not enough time to really let little things build. Because I feel like those tiny touches and stuff are things that, and maybe I'm wrong, I mean, I've never made a movie, but I feel like those things are things that can get added with enough time and input. Mm-hmm. Whereas like a rushed movie or like a sequel that's coming out really quickly, it's like, the jokes that are in it are kind of forced, like they had a quota. And
market research says that a joke at this point in the movie hits the hardest.
Yeah, and this is why I feared Deadpool 2.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that I liked is he's only 15. So like there's one scene where he has to drive a car.
Oh, right.
And he he kind of like wrecks it almost immediately. And I was like, oh man, awesome. What a dick move. And then you're like, oh wait, maybe it was an accident because he
Right.
just doesn't know how to drive.
Yeah. It's like having him run across the field without having something to swing from. It's
Yeah.
like he's just trying to get around, and you don't see Spider-Man in that position very often.
Right. So very cool, very fun movie. Definitely check it out.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite movie of the year so far. I mean, I just saw it a couple hours ago, so
Yeah.
I'll have to digest it a little bit. But
It's not quite Wonder Woman for me, but
you liked Wonder Woman more.
I
definitely like this more than Wonder Woman.
It's hard to say I like Gal Gadot and Chris Pine more than Tom Holland because I like Tom Holland so much. But yeah, I don't think I can say that. I think I just may be in love with Gal Gadot. That may
just
simply
so-
be it.
she's just so-
if Tom Holland,
It's just so pretty.
if Tom Holland were a gorgeous woman who could look at the camera and make me feel like I need to be a better person, then I would like this more.
Like I think Wonder Woman.
I don't know. I
was-
think actually, I want to say I think they complement each other really well this summer for in terms of like giving things a different flavor and atmosphere and spin.
Mhm.
You know, with Wonder Woman, it was like, look how messed up the world is by seeing how good this person is, and this one's got like a man. Look at someone actually kind of struggling to be a superhero and wanting to be a superhero. It's not like against his will.
Right, yeah, he like wants to be an Avenger, and he's like when he says goodbye to Tony Stark, and he's like, all right, the next adventure or the next mission, and then the title that says 8 months later, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
he kind of got used.
Yeah. He's like, oh,
He's just
poor
another
kid.
one of Tony Stark's one night stands kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, as much as I enjoyed Wonder Woman, I had no expectations from that.
Yeah.
Whereas going into this, I really had high hopes for it being a Marvel production, and like I know you say you don't like all the stuff that they've put out, but it's all pretty much quality. Like there's nothing Marvel's put out has been as bad as like Batman versus Superman.
I haven't seen them all,
Nothing.
but I'm inclined to believe that.
And so Wonder Woman being good,
Wait, hold on. Iron Man 2.
not as bad as Batman versus Superman.
Oh, I don't plan on watching either of them ever again, so I'll just take your word for it.
But like we saw the trailer for Justice League
Oh, God.
going into Spider-Man, and you're just like, ugh, I'm gonna have to sit through this whole goddamn movie multiple times because you're gonna have to watch it in the theaters, and then when it comes out, because it's gonna suck in theaters, they're gonna have the special extended DVD, and then you're gonna have to like watch that, and then we'll have to watch Justice League Part 2 because it's a 2-part movie.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't know if that's true though, because I have not watched the extended version of Batman versus Superman.
Not worth it.
You see, and I don't think I'll bother. And I will go see this, but you know, I'm not hopeful. It is truly the DC fan in me that will go and just hope for some things I can enjoy.
Yeah.
And not with expectation, but just like sort of hope, like, please, God, give me something here. But what I may end up doing is walking out as mad as I was at Batman versus Superman, that I walked in that way with too, but still ended up so much more pissed than I thought.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be mad, not only because they're ruining Batman again by giving him a crappy movie to be in, but that they'll be ruining Wonder Woman too, because now I loved what she was.
Yeah.
So... but apparently the director for Wonder Woman's coming back for Wonder Woman 2, so hopefully that can help. But I don't know if that means it's going to be like where it's going to be set in time.
Yeah, I don't know.
It'll
be interesting. I mean, you could set it anywhere. I mean,
yeah.
So
if it's current, my expectations would be low.
I agree.
Yeah,
it's kind of I've said it before, but I think having a comic book movie set in the past, especially one as colorful as Wonder Woman, being set in the past gives it a certain charm to it. Like I really want whatever they do, the next Fantastic Four movie, because they will, is to just have it take place in the 60s.
Mhm.
Because I've been reading a lot of old Fantastic Four, and it's the perfect time period for that, where you could just, and science today. Meanwhile, on the dark side of the moon live the Watchers and the oxygen part of the world. Yeah, on the blue side of the moon, there's oxygen.
I don't want to see this movie.
I do, because it'd be fun and charming. Because it'd be fun, like that X-Men First Class took place in the '60s, and that movie was lots of fun.
That was fun.
And they don't all have to be dire end of the world movies. Even as depressing as Logan was,
Yeah.
the events in Logan
Pretty small.
are very small. Like if Logan failed, if Logan fails, I don't want to spoil that movie for anyone. If Logan fails in Logan, the greater world at large is greatly unaffected.
Well, in coming back to Spider-Man for a moment too, even though the stakes got higher, I still felt like, hey man, this isn't like the world is going to end right now if Spider-Man doesn't solve this thing to save the world right now. There's no giant beam from the sky or army of creatures. It's like someone's going to have some power and they're bad.
Yeah, really all it is he's just trying to stop a robbery.
Yeah, that's it.
And the guy who's robbing things is just selling stuff.
Yep.
Then that's it. Like the guy,
he's like a drug dealer.
Yeah, he's just stealing something to sell it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. Like the stakes are so low, but the tension,
they're meaningful. They're meaningful to the characters in the movie. So
like Iron Man doesn't even show up at the end of that movie. Like he should be there supervising what's going on at Avengers Tower.
Right.
And he's not. And that's how of little consequence all that stuff is to him.
Yeah.
Well,
and there is one sort of Iron Man ex machina moment in the movie, but it's not the climax of the film.
No, it's and the end of the movie, like Spider-Man decides this is worth fighting for. Like stopping this is worth it to me.
Yeah.
And he's got to live with it, and also that sequence where he's like underneath all that rubble is straight out of an old issue of Spider-Man.
Oh.
It's which was a cool callback. There's an issue of Spider-Man where he's like trapped underneath all this rubble and Aunt May is dying and he's got to get her this magic medicine that'll heal her, but he's stuck under this building that's collapsed on him.
Uh-huh.
And no one is coming to help him. Like the help is not coming. And he basically has to will him, like find the strength to get out of the hole.
Himself.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's a cool Easter egg. And it was done pretty well,
Yeah, it worked. And that's another thing where if I'm not just trying to rag on Tobey Maguire, although I honestly don't like him, but like if he were doing that particular scene, it wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't work, no.
But with Tom Holland, it super does. I'm like, yeah, look at go ahead.
Well,
Tell it to yourself. Give yourself a pep talk.
Well, because he's calling himself, come on, Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man. He's a child still.
Yeah.
He doesn't consider himself like a man. He still thinks of himself as a boy or a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's like cheering himself on. Like until that moment, I don't think he really believes that he is Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it's such a sort of it's a childish way of trying to do it. Where like as an adult, you'd try to like think yourself into something maybe with logic and argument and stuff, and try to rationalize things. And he's just like basically going, "Come on, I'm Spider-Man. Do it.
Right.
Come on."
You could do it, Spider-Man.
And then he doesn't, and he dies. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, he
Spoiler
drowns
alert.
to death. The movie ends with a funeral for a friend. As the building crushes him, it says squish because he's a spider. All right. Well, we're at about that time.
For the end of the show, or
for
movie versus movie?
For the end of the show,
question?
but it looks like you're prepared for a sequence of Batman versus movie, Dawn of Movie.
I do look that way, huh?
Yeah. So what do you got, Matt?
Well, I was thinking it would be interesting to have a movie versus movie with two disaster elements.
Oh.
One being Independence Day.
An excellent film.
And the other being Twister.
There's a woman that I work with who that is her favorite movie. Christine, if you're listening, congratulations. You made it to the show.
Christine, your favorite movie is Twister.
Doesn't make any sense.
I applaud you.
No, don't.
Well, not for liking it, but for admitting it. That takes guts.
Oh, I have to pick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can talk about some pros and cons of either of them.
Independence Day is good despite itself. Like,
it's enjoyable in spite of itself.
It's a masterpiece despite itself. I love Independence Day.
I don't know if I could say Independence Day is
like
good.
It's hokey and corny.
It is hokey
and everything, but I love every second of it. Even the stuff that's terrible, I love.
Even the dog jumping in front of the fire.
That's so bad. It's so bad, so stupid. But I always forget about the whole first lady. I was going to say the lady president. I always forget about the first lady stuff, like where she's laying there and all the. Is it Vivica A. Fox is the Will Smith's wife?
I think that's right.
I always forget about her storyline with the dog, and then she finds the president's wife and all that nonsense.
Right. Yeah, and they're in a tunnel that's filled with fire, and because they don't get directly burned by it somehow, they also live through it. They don't die of breathing in noxious fumes.
Yeah.
Or temperature.
Yeah. It's an excellent movie. Full of great performances. Like Bill Pullman will always be my president. Will Smith is great.
Hey, I'd trade our current president for Bill Pullman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like almost anything I would trade our current president.
Can someone make that happen, please?
Hello. I haven't watched the new Independence Day.
I have not either.
But from the trailers, like he has like a weird high pitched voice.
Oh Lord!
So I don't know what's up with that. But Twister.
Well, hang on.
We're going Bill Pullman versus Bill Paxton.
But before we go to Twister, there's a couple more things in Independence Day that are at least worth noting.
Right, Jeff Goldblum.
Well, always. And
Windows 95.
I'm not as excited about that one. But it's probably the first movie that really gave us a monument being destroyed, where it's like the White House gets exploded, and now we have like movies where every time something shows up, it's blowing up things that are like monuments and Capitol, buildings and stuff. And I know they make some joke about that in the second Independence Day, but like that's tons of movies now.
Yeah. Well, like remember in is it the second Austin Powers movie where he says, "I'm going to blow up the White House," and they just play the clip from Independence Day, and then they cut back to Dr. Evil, and he's laughing. He's like, that didn't really happen. That's from a movie. It's from a movie. It didn't happen. Don't worry about it."
But also, I think it's worth giving them some credit for their alien design. I know it wasn't completely like unlike other alien designs, but I did think they were pretty cool.
Yeah, no, the aliens are cool. Like everything about the movie works for me. Everything about it works.
Randy Quaid,
even Randy Quaid and his weird kids work.
Okay,
like especially because like back in the early mid '90s, you had everybody with their abduction stories and all that stuff, and that really plays into the plot. And
I kind of forgot about that little zeitgeist.
Oh yeah.
X-Files.
There are so many people out there who said they got probed by aliens.
Right.
And that's out there.
So Twister.
It's out there. Truth is out there. And Twister has tornadoes.
And Helen Hunt.
And Finger of God. And
when I was young, I had a huge thing for Helen Hunt.
I think Helen Hunt is a lovely woman. I always liked Mad About You. And
I don't know if my crush holds. But, it's been a while since I've seen Twister. So maybe if I watch it, I'll go like, oh, yeah.
We should watch Twister.
That's true. So you all know what we'll be doing after we wrap up this podcast. Selling points. What are the high points? What are the low points?
High points of Twister are decent special effects at the time. It's been so long since I've seen Twister.
Was it the first of the natural disaster movies of that kind of era? Like
I
before
feel like
Volcano,
it was. Do you know what
Dante's
year?
Peak, and everything?
Is that like 95?
That was my guess in my head, so I'm going to go with probably. Tell you what, I'll check it out on IMDb.
It's got to be. It definitely was before Volcano, because I think Volcano and whatnot was 97, 98.
Well, didn't Volcano?
No, because Armageddon
Volcano and
was
Dante's
98.
Peak came out at the same time, right?
Yeah. I was thinking about Volcano like just the other day. Like,
Ugh.
Why did they bother trying to save the city?
Just evacuate.
Just leave.
Twister's 1996.
Wow. Okay.
Although there was another Twister.
Night of the Twisters?
1989. Nope. Well, that's the thing too. That's also 1996. But there's a movie called Twister in 1989.
That was the drama based on the board game. It was the sequel to Clue.
Twister 2, Left Foot Green. So wait, okay.
You will play until I say you can stop playing.
So decent
There's
special.
just a mangled body, like just twisted into a knot and dead. The cops find him, and it's like another one. In my head, a man.
Was that the end of that plot?
Well, that's the beginning of the movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
But there's got to be lots of twists.
Oh
It's
yeah,
called
so many twists.
The killer was you.
The tagline was like, "Now it's your turn." What was the movie? What was the tagline for the Halle Berry movie in the theaters?
They messed with the wrong mother.
They messed with the wrong
like
mother.
that?
And I said, it'd be great if the tagline was like, "They finally found the right mother."
Okay, so Twister pros are Helen Hunt was cute, decent special effects
Decent
for
special
the time.
effects. Bill Paxton. Isn't Carrie Elways in it too? And isn't he like the guy in the other team?
Carrie always is it something of the bride.
Yeah, the Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride. Yeah. He's the competitor.
He's the
Bad guy.
The
I mean,
antagonist.
he's not a tornado.
Carrie Elways as the tornado.
Twister.
It's just him going.
He spins
Finger of
around
God.
like Wonder Woman in the old show.
The tornado has googly eyes.
Is that it? Is that it for the selling points?
It's got a lot of lines that I know, but I can't think of them right now. Like, it's got a lot of it's a very quotable movie.
I think it knows what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's got that sort of like lighthearted, not really taking itself too seriously.
And
thing.
it gave us the Twister experience at Universal Studios, which was cool.
Never
That was
had that
cool.
experience.
It was like introduced by Bill Paxton, and he's like, "The tornado, one of nature's perfect killing machines. Here's what an F1 tornado feels like." And like the fans in the studio turn on, and you're like, "Ooh!" And he goes, and then it cuts back to Bill Paxton. He's like, "Now feel the full force of an F5 tornado bearing down on you."
And then you get a fence through your stomach.
And then they turn the fan on high, and it's like, and then like things on the set move, and then there's like fire explosions. It's cool. And then at the end, then he goes, "Tornadoes. Go see Twister in theaters 10 years ago."
Do they acknowledge at some point that that's not actually equal to the force of an F5 because you would have been sucked off the ground and killed?
Please don't say sucked off on the podcast.
You have told me multiple times this is an explicit content podcast, so I will say sucked off if I want to.
Correct term is vacuumed towards.
So I guess low points of Twister. Corny. I know that's a pro too, but still. They're holding onto a pipe. Yeah. I feel like the mother of, and now if this actress listens to your podcast, I don't want her to be offended, but the mother of Helen Hunt's character, if I remember correctly, was not very good at acting. True. That's true. I had wind chimes outside my apartment. I took them down because they were annoying me. So okay. Well, all right then. What's your pick? Oh yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I think I'm gonna go with Twister. Believe it or not. Yeah. See, now I could watch that and kind of laugh at it, but I don't think I don't need to. I don't need to watch it although it is a pretty good Bill Pullman impression. So good job, Nick.
We will not go quietly into the night.
I didn't say
you encouraged me. We will not vanish without a fight.
Oh God.
We're going to live on. We're going to survive.
Why are you taking your pants off
today? Because you have to salute the flag. We celebrate our Independence Day.
That's
the whole speech. Pilot. Well, no, there's like a little bit
speech.
more at the beginning where he's like,
"Oh, where they can take our lives, but they can't take our freedom."
No, that's the one with the dude from Daddy's Home 2.
Oh, this whole court's out of order?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
I want the truth.
So I'm gonna go with Twister because I think I'd rather watch it. And I don't think, as hokey as it is and stuff, I don't think it has as many drawbacks for me as Independence Day does. Like, Independence Day may have some things that I enjoy, but it has actual negatives too, whereas Twister's just corny and stupid, and then it's got some good points. So I go with Twister.
All right. One for Twister and one for Independence Day. I'm looking forward to watching Twister now, so stay tuned for
Nick's amendment when he apologizes for being wrong.
There's no way I'm going to be wrong. I've seen Independence Day gotta be 25, 26 times.
I saw it twice.
You've only seen it twice?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like on TV all the time. Like that one, when Bill Pullman finishes his speech and that one soldier goes, yeah! I've seen that guy in like 100 movies and I couldn't name any of them.
But you know him.
But I know him from the scene where he like puts his fist in the air in Independence Day. Ready 1, box 3. Doesn't anybody have a missile left? I do, Mr. President.
So if that's the end of the reel,
I'm just gonna read Independence Day. Hey boys, remember me?
Oh God, you're making me feel more and more comfortable with my vote for Twister.
Well, anything to plug, Matt?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I know I usually say something here or there about mental health stuff. There's a podcast out there called Personality Hacker from the Personality Hacker website. And particularly for people who are considered what we call intuitives. And if you don't know whether you are or not, if you feel like you're a little bit of a weirdo, you may be an intuitive. It's a really good resource for just kind of playing with ideas about different kinds of personality styles and stuff. I found it really interesting, and I think it helps kind of put things in perspective for people. So if you're looking for something free and interesting, there you go. And if you go to their website, personalityhacker.com, you can take a free, pretty short quiz to find out what your own personality type is. It's not super scientific or anything, but it's pretty cool stuff.
All right. And check out thisweekinfilm.com. I'll update it at some point. I don't think I've done the last 3 episodes on there. It takes a lot of time, and once the episode goes up and I didn't do it, I'm like, I'll have to get back to that. But you can find all our old stuff there. You find our links to the Facebook, the Twitter, all that stuff. It's all there on the website. But if that's the end of the reel, we'll see you next week in film.
See you, everybody.
Toodaloo.